The Dow is up after a sell-off on Wall Street. President Trump's fresh tariff threats on the European Union spooked investors, basically dragging the S&P correction territory by yesterday's closing bell. And now, even with a slight boost, on track to end its worst week in 2 years. CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us live now. And Kelly, I suppose the big question now is, how are Americans holding up under the weight of all of this very obvious uncertainty and back and forth, too?
So by and large, they're feeling concerned. And I say that because we got new data on how the consumer is feeling today. It's called the Consumer Sentiment Survey from the University of Michigan. And it showed an 11% drop in terms of how people are feeling about the economy, about their personal finances, about where the economy is going in the future. Now, this is after a big drop last month as well. And we've sort of seen the past couple of months how consumers are feeling start to deteriorate. And in this specific survey, a lot of people mentioned uncertainty. There's that word again around economic and trade policies. Now, I do want to emphasize this is a preliminary reading. We will get the official results in 2 weeks at the end of the month. And traditionally, we don't actually look at consumer sentiment a lot and put a lot of weight on it. It's considered soft data instead of hard data like an inflation number or a jobs report where you actually get hard numbers. But this gives really a real-time picture of how the consumer is feeling, and it comports with what we have heard from CEOs saying that the consumer is weakening and spending less, and those retail sales numbers dipping last month. So there's just a lot of uncertainty and a little bit of anxiety because folks are seeing this whiplash and feeling a little bit uncertain about where things are going, Mugo.
Yeah, and investors obviously uncertain as well as they digest this new data. Can you walk us through what's happening in the markets right now?
One word, uncertainty. That's really what is driving all of this. It all comes back to that. Investors like to know what sectors to bet on, essentially, what sectors are going to see a lot of growth. And as you mentioned, businesses are feeling a lot of uncertainty. They don't know where to invest, where to lay off, what country to import their goods or parts from. And so you're seeing that reflected in the market. We have the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ in correction territory. That was a word that you mentioned. That basically means when an index falls 10% from their recent record high. The Dow is actually, it's up 500 points right now today. So it's 800 points off of correction territory. But generally, we would have expected to see actually a drop based on the consumer sentiment numbers that I mentioned. But the markets are rallying today. From what I'm hearing from folks, they're seeing this as a bit of a buying opportunity because some of these major mega cap tech stocks have been pretty battered the past couple of days. And it's an opportunity to get back in, make some profits, and then kind of go back into wait and see mode.
Yeah, I guess that is one way to look at things at this point. The Federal Reserve is obviously in a difficult spot with Americans feeling uneasy, and then tariffs, obviously, we can't stop talking about that, threatening to push prices higher. So what does all of this mean for the Fed's rate decision that's coming up just next week?
That's right. So we are expecting them to hold rates steady, but we're going to get a lot of guidance from them. They do this basically once a quarter where they're going to tell us how many rate cuts or rate hikes, just sort of any rate movement that they're expecting for the year. And you hit on it. We have this slowing consumer sentiment. We have seen consumer spending drop. In fact, for the first quarter, GDP is tracking negative, but we also have this wild card of what tariffs are going to do, where inflation is going to go. Remember, we did actually get some very good data on inflation this week that was positive for the Fed, but they're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place right now, because if you cut and you actually do have inflation from tariffs, they're going to have to reverse quickly. But if you don't cut and consumer sentiment does actually lead to slowing growth, you could have a situation where there's stagflation. So I think they're in a wait and see mode, but that's something that we're definitely going to be asking them next week. I will actually be in Washington for that meeting.
All right, Kelly O'Grady, CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent, thank you so much for joining us. I think we'll see you again in the next hour. Thanks for your time.